Well, let's begin. Schmier, how are you today? Thank you very much for taking my call.
Yeah, my pleasure, my pleasure. Looking forward to come to Mexico. So let's talk about it.
Absolutely, because yes, my first question is actually related to your upcoming show here in Mexico at Candelabrum Metal Fest. And it will be a show dedicated to your debut album, Infernal Overkill. And I really want to go to that specific era of being an underground metal band in a divided Germany, close to the fall of the Berlin Wall, and how these last years of the Cold War inspired you as an artist.
Oh yeah, it did inspire us a lot because there was a huge tension, in Germany at that time, and we actually have recorded Sentence of Death and Infernal Overkill in Berlin that was divided at that time. So when we went to Berlin, we had to drive on a highway through East Germany. There was one highway that led straight to Berlin from Western Germany. It was like the neutral highway that you couldn't leave, you could only stop to get some food. And then it was a little bit of East Germany there at the gas station, basically. But you could not go out of this highway. And this highway led us to Berlin, where we have recorded the first two albums. And of course, it was weird, it was like driving in a zoo, because you could see the country but you could not go in. And at that time we always thought how it would be to play in East Germany or how to go there. And later on, when our album came out, we have a lot of fan posts. We got a lot of letters from East German fans. So we were very surprised that there was a metal scene in East Germany because we didn't know if it because we knew it's not allowed to listen to metal. Metal was kind of undercover and oppressed, and the government didn't like metal bands. So for us, it was stunning to see that there's a metal scene rising in the East, even though it wasn't allowed. So yeah, I mean, the it was inspiring, and also the freedom that we had in the West
Mm.
is something that those people didn't have in the East. So when the walls came down later on, also there was a big relief for the whole country.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something that caught my attention because, yeah, you didn't expect to have a fan base in East Germany. But do you think it was a very passionate fan base considering that metal was forbidden?
Oh yeah, I think the thing is when you take away freedom from people, they will always be longing for stuff, longing for music, longing for freedom, longing for traveling and stuff like this. So the metal scene was very passionate, I think, because of the fact that it wasn't allowed, that it was kind of oppressed, and I think people even get more passionate about it, because they were looking for metal shows and see international bands, and it was impossible for them. So I guess it's always like this that when a market is kind of more difficult or when you oppress people, it kind of pushes the people to go that way because they want to know. People want answers. People want to have don't want to have questions all the time. They want to know. And I think at the beginning of our career, most letters that we get from the fan club was from East Germany. It was really, really wild, and we were very proud. I remember that because, yeah, I mean, over the years we've been to many countries, but if it's the own country and people are locked away, it's different, because you couldn't imagine how it is. And yeah, I remember did it very well. And actually, on the last tour we played in East Germany, I met some people that said, "Hey, we wrote those letters to the fan club," and a girl named Elaine replied at that time, and I was the one that wrote, and so I met some of those people And they told me how it was, back in the day in the East Germany. Also, I met a lot of musicians that played in bands in East Germany at that time. And they also told me a lot of stories, Also, one of our sound guys, Jackie, he's also working for the band Saxon. He was an East German musician for many years, and he was a singer in a metal band in East Germany. So it's a very interesting topic, I think.
Absolutely. And the story you just shared that you met the fans from that era, I think that's the absolute magic of not only metal, but music in general.
Yeah, music in general unites the people, and I said that in the previous interview also. It's wherever I go, I meet metal fans all over the world, and then it doesn't matter if they're from Mexico, Japan, America, Colombia, or from Iran, We're metal fans, we're friends, and I think the world could learn a lot from the metal scene.
Totally agree. Well, Schmier, I want to keep talking more about history, but also about the current present, because in Birth of Malice, your recent album, the album closes with a version of one of my favorite songs of all time, which is Fast as a Shark by Accept. And I do want to know the influence, the direct influence Accept had on you, not only in metal, but as a German musician.
We when Fast as a Shark came out, we already been fans of Accept, because the Breaker album, also the stuff before was good, but Breaker was already an amazing album. But then Fast as a Shark and the special intro, caught our attention because basically it's making fun about German traditional music. And when we were young kids, we loved this idea, because we felt oppressed by the German conservative music scene, and it was like a scream for freedom, a scream for rock, a scream for metal. And when the song came out with its speed and its brutality and the riffing and the solo part also, it was a very special song, and I remember I played it very loud in my little room, in my childhood room, opening the window so the neighbors could hear it. So so yeah, I think Accept was a very influential band because they also were the first heavier of the German bands. There was some great German bands, like of course Scorpions, but also like Trance and stuff. But Accept were going heavier, and that we loved that. The vocals weren't so clean, the music was more rough, and so Accept were a very big influence on those early albums. I have to say I'm not such a big fan of the albums afterwards. When Metal Heart came
Oh,
out or Balls to the Wall. Balls to the Wall was their biggest album, but I didn't like it. For
mm,
me, yeah, for me, Balls to the Wall was already too commercial. It was going away from the
mm.
dirt, from the speed they had, and from the roughness they had, into more of a heavy driven normal metal album. Even though the
Like
album
a more American approach, right?
more American approach, more standard beats, more calculated, I would say, not as
Mm.
not as wild anymore. And even if I look at the album now, of course it's a good album. But when it came out, for me, I was totally disappointed.
I totally understand you when a band breaks your heart in that way, when it changes that
Yeah, when
original
when
spirit.
when the band changes the style for the fans, it's the worst. Then later, when you look back, it's same with Metallica. When Metallica brought out the Black Album, it's their biggest album and it's their big way to success. But for many metal fans, it was like, what's going on? But if you look at the Black Album now, it's a masterpiece. Of course, it has so
Yeah.
many good songs, and it kind of defined metal into the mainstream. And it was a big step. But when it came out, I was like, what the fuck, And so it's, we have a lot of heavy metal fans. We have a lot of passion for music, and when something changes, we don't like it. I totally understand that.
But what's interesting is that over the years we can change our minds. The Metallica case is an special one.
Of
I
course.
took on my case because yeah, when I started listening to them and then I arrived to the Black Album, Block, Reload, it was like, what the fuck is this? Now I wanted to keep on listening to the older records.
Yeah. But nowadays, if you look back, it's a great album, of course.
Yeah, totally. And Schmier, you mentioned something that I loved, how Accept was for you like Scream for Freedom, right?
Yeah.
And to me, your music is that way. To me, since I listened to you for the first time in high school, I always thought about destruction and yeah, Scream for Rebellion. And nowadays, I still listen to newer metal bands or punk bands or even alternative rock bands that share their ideals through their music, but not many people care about the message and to stand up for the fight, you know? What do you think is missing here?
Yeah, it's a different generation, I think, Uh, it's the internet generation also. People, I don't know, when we were young, it was, for me, it was important to deliver a message, because music for us was always a part of rebellion also, rebellion against society, rebellion against conservative life, trying to break out of the routine of, what people want to put you into a routine, into the school, into your job, and music for me was giving me that freedom, I could do what I want. I could write my songs. I could go travel with the band, and that was a very important part of my youth. And over the time we started to see the world, the more I see the world, the more I was getting interested in the world and how the world works and how, why was there so many wars between humans, and what is the source of all evil on this planet and stuff like this. I got Germany is also like Mexico. It's very conservative Catholic. There's a lot of church involved, and I got really raised like this, with church, and everybody was very, very religious, and I raised a lot of questions when I was young about this stuff, because religious, we all know religion was misused by centuries for wars and for, power games and everything. So yeah, I don't know why the newer bands now, a lot of the younger bands say, yeah, metal is just about music. It shouldn't be political. I don't agree to this, but I'm an 80s kid, and the 80s thrash metal was very political, bands like Nuclear Assault and also Creator and stuff, they always been very, very political. And for us, it was always important to give a message out. If other bands want to sing about unicorns and old wars that are, that happened, they can do that. If they don't want to deliver a message, it's just pure entertainment. I understand, but this is not our way. We like to talk about stuff that is relevant, stuff that is in our heads, and I think it's also interesting for a metalhead in Mexico or a metalhead in Japan to understand what's going on in my head, because we're in this game together. We're living on one planet, and people forget about this. That's something I really hate about politics, is that, you know, Mexico against America, America against Russia, Russia against whatever. The people don't want that. The leaders want that for their power games. And I think for me as a metalhead, I want to transport a message that says we're in here together and let's fight this shit. And, I cannot change the world, but I can put my thoughts into the music and deliver a positive message to all the metal fans that listen to Destruction.
That's a very important thing. I believe we may not change the world, but what is important is to inspire others to do that change. Eventually, will come.
Exactly. And, you know, also I always say my music is my therapy also, you know.
Mm.
I can cleanse my soul, I can scream it out, I can talk about it, and that for me is a great thing, you know, for for other people, they might go crazy about what's going on in the world, you know. When I write about it, it helps me to understand stuff and to yeah, have a positive vibe about it, you know, because
Hmm.
it's not always. Sometimes people say, "Oh, your lyrics, they're very dark, and you have such evil topics." No, no, this is reality. You know, this is reality, and we talk about reality. But if you read my lyrics, I never bring a message that is not in a positive way. I always try to find a good positive message in the evil that we are, that humans are, basically, you know. So I think if you listen to the lyrics and read them, at the end, they're giving you a positive message about this planet that is fucking evil, or the our leaders that are evil, you know, or about, you know, stuff that is going on that could, you know, could be better for us, but we can't change it because we're caught in the system, you know. There's a lot of those things that might sound negative, but I think at the end, when you talk about it, it's like a therapy. And then you spread the idea around the world. Oh, this guy from Germany might live in a country that is more rich than our country, or more progressed than our country, or more whatever than our country, but he still sees the world with critical eyes, you know. And I think
Hmm.
we should always stay critical. That's what we see about the world policy of today. What's going on right now, you know, is a crazy soap opera that we're in at the moment, you know. And I wonder how we're going to look back in some years at this moment of the policy of now, what's going on. It's insane, actually.
It's terribly insane, but yeah, I do agree that at the end we're all surrounded by evil all the time. The world is evil, the people are evil, but we must make a difference. We must be like that
Exactly.
light.
Exactly. You know, values are the most important thing in life, you know, teaching values. And that's just a little thing we can do as a musician, as a band. We have fans, hundreds, thousands of fans all over the world. And if you can teach a little bit of values, a little bit of a good message, then it's an eye opener. It's good. So that's how I see it.
Absolutely. Well, Schmier, I have another one last question for you, and this one is related to another role you usually play as a producer. Because if there's a recent band that I have really liked is Burning Witches, and you have produced them since their debut album, and I do want to know the story you have with them because it's such a great band.
Yeah, it's basically, you know, Romana, the guitar player. I met her at one of our shows one day, and in Switzerland, and we became friends. And that's also how I met Damir, who later joined Destruction as a guitarist.
Mhm.
And Romana was playing in a band at that time with a bunch of guys, you know. And she always said to me, I wanna. My big dream is a band with only girls, you know, because playing with guys is different, you know, like playing with girls is my big dream. And I said to her, you know, once you have a good singer and you maybe have the right girls, call me up and I'm gonna help you, you know, with the first ideas, like, you know, how what are the steps to make this successful and put this together. And she called me one day and said, "Hey, I found a good singer, and now I want to form the band. I have already a bass player." And we were sitting together and said, "Okay, let's do this." And I said, "Okay, I'm gonna help you guys at the beginning um, to you know, sign the right contracts, find the label, you know. They wrote the songs themselves, of course. I produced the albums. I gave them some good advices, you know, and let's say I gave them a good kickstart, you know, some of my experiences that I made in 30, 40 years of the music business, I gave to them so they don't make the mistakes that we did, you know. And it was a very interesting cooperation because on one side, everybody thinks it's easier for women to attract attention as a band and stuff. But on the other side, when Burning Witches started, everybody was so skeptical, and a lot of my friends even, and people that are working in the business at record labels, at booking agencies, everybody didn't want to sign them. Everybody was like, no, 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 women, I don't want to sign a woman heavy metal band. And I was actually shocked at the beginning that it was a difficult start at the beginning. But once the first album was done and we delivered some quality, everybody was kind of getting into it, you know. So for me, it was also, you know, giving away a little bit of my life to them to help them to start the band. And on the other side, I got a lot of fun back. You know, for me, it was a lot of memories. How was it the first time in the studio when we were young? You know, I could give a lot of interesting advice to the band. So for me, it was a give and take. You know, I produced their albums. I gave them some management advices, and the band developed really quick. You know, they of course they had some difficulties like every band has at the beginning with the lineup until you find the right persons that are in the band, you know. But meanwhile, the band is very successful and working hard, like touring a lot, like really globally also, and that's great to see because you know we all know we need more women in heavy metal. You know, it's great.